The Grand Hall of the Galactic Confederacy buzzed with the usual diplomatic chatter. 50 years had passed since humanity joined the interstellar community, yet Earth still occupied the lowest tier of representation. Ambassador Alan Foster sat quietly at the far end of the chamber, his weathered face betraying no emotion as the Viridian delegate droned on about trade regulations. Foster had spent 15 years in this position, watching as human innovation and hard work were consistently undervalued. The Qualitax representatives glanced his way occasionally, their 6 eyes blinking in what humans had learned was their expression of smug superiority. The motion to reconsider Earth's status is denied due to insufficient evidence of cultural maturity, announced High Counselor Zurax, barely looking up from his datapad. Next agenda item, please. Foster cleared his throat. Point of order, High Counselor. The room fell silent, not from respect but from mild surprise. Human representatives rarely spoke outside their designated timeframes. Ambassador Foster, your delegation's speaking time is scheduled for tomorrow's session, said Zurax, his translator conveying his impatience perfectly. What I have to say cannot wait until tomorrow, Foster replied. Standing slowly, he reached into his pocket and withdrew a small data crystal, which he placed on the table before him. This contains an official communication from Earth's unified government. The Viridian delegate, Minister Threll, fluttered his wing membranes in annoyance. Is this yet another petition for advancement? The protocols are quite clear. Foster smiled slightly. No, Minister. This is something different. It's a notice of intent to withdraw from all Confederate treaties, effective 30 standard days from now. The chamber erupted in a cacophony of alien voices. Some delegates leaped to their feet. Others remained seated in shock. The Qualitax delegation huddled together, their communication tendrils pulsing rapidly. Zurax banged his ceremonial staff against the floor. Order. Ambassador Foster, surely you understand the implications of such an action. No member species has ever withdrawn. We understand perfectly, Foster replied. For 50 years, humanity has contributed resources, scientific discoveries, and cultural works to this confederacy. We fulfilled every obligation, met every standard, yet we remain without meaningful representation. Minister Threll's translator struggled to keep up with his rapid speech. This is merely a negotiating tactic. Humans cannot survive without Confederate markets and technology. Foster looked directly at the Viridian. Perhaps you should review the balance of trade between Earth and Viridia before making such claims. A Nolaran delegate, whose species had always been somewhat sympathetic to humans, raised a tentacle. What would prevent this withdrawal, Ambassador? Equal voting rights, removal of technology transfer restrictions, fair access to colonization opportunities, the same rights as founding members. Foster's voice remained calm. Simple equality. The Qualitax senior delegate's voice rasped through his translator. Preposterous. Humans are barely a century into space travel. Your species still fights among itself. And yet we've maintained peace for 30 years, Foster countered. Longer than the Qualitax did at a similar stage of development, according to Confederate historical records. High Counselor Zurax raised his hand for silence. We will take this matter under advisement. The Confederacy does not respond well to ultimatums. Ambassador. Foster nodded once and gathered his materials. Neither does humanity, High Counselor. 30 days. He turned and walked from the chamber without waiting for a dismissal. Behind him, the delegates resumed their loud discussions. None noticed the small group of human observers quietly slipping away to separate communication stations throughout the Confederate capital. Within an hour, encrypted messages reached Earth and every human outpost across 20 systems. The clock had started ticking. Captain Olivia Martinez stood on the bridge of the Earth fleet carrier Determination, watching as her crew worked with quiet efficiency. The massive ship drifted in the shadow of Europa, hidden from both conventional scanners and curious eyes. Similar scenes played out across the solar system. Human military vessels, carefully positioned yet officially on routine exercises. Status report, she said, turning to her executive officer. "All systems nominal, Captain. The new shielding is working perfectly. Confederate sensor suites passed over us 3 times in the last hour. No indication they detected us." Martinez nodded. "And the fleet?" Admiral Wilson reports all ships are in position. The Arcturus battle group completed their jump 2 hours ago and have gone dark as ordered. The truth was, Earth had been preparing for this moment for nearly a decade. While publicly maintaining their image as the Confederacy's eager junior partners, humanity had been building, researching, and planning. The diplomatic approach had been given every chance to succeed, but parallel preparations had always been underway. In a research facility buried deep beneath the lunar surface, scientists Natalie Green and Peter Collins made final adjustments to their prototype dry system. The lab was officially designated for Agricultural Technology Research, a classification guaranteed to bore Confederate inspectors. "Final simulation complete," Green announced, brushing a strand of auburn hair from her face. "The Hawking-Morrison equations are holding. We're seeing 300% efficiency improvement over standard Confederate drives." Collins whistled low. "And they have no idea we've developed this." "None," Green replied. "We've been careful to appear appropriately behind in theoretical physics. The patents we filed through Confederate channels are all cleverly limited." The truth was more significant than just one technology. For years, human scientists have been publishing incomplete research, sharing watered-down versions of their discoveries, and maintaining 2 separate development tracks. One public, one hidden. Meanwhile, in the asteroid belt, what appeared to be standard mining operations concealed massive manufacturing centers. Industrial Supervisor Jack Rogers supervised as automated systems assembled components for weapon systems that officially didn't exist. Production quota exceeded by 15%, his assistant reported. "That's the 3rd month in a row." Rogers nodded. "Ship the excess to Luna Base using the secure transport protocols. Mark it as agricultural equipment as usual." Earth's industrial capacity had been systematically underreported to the Confederacy. Official records showed humanity producing consumer goods, raw materials, and basic components. The reality was far more impressive and deliberately hidden. In his office at Fleet Headquarters in Geneva, Admiral George Wilson received updates from across human space. For years, he had repositioned forces, established hidden bases, and trained his personnel for this moment. The Confederacy believed Earth maintained a modest defense force appropriate to its junior status. They would soon learn the truth. "Sir, Ambassador Foster's message has been received," his aide reported. "The ultimatum has been delivered." Wilson nodded. "Acknowledge receipt. Initiate Phase 2 protocols." Throughout human territory, communication systems quietly switched to independent networks. Supply chains reorganized themselves. Civilian traffic patterns shifted imperceptibly. If one looked at the data with the right eyes, it would be obvious. Humanity was preparing for something major. Yet the Confederacy saw nothing unusual. The Viridian monitors reported normal human activity. The Qualitax intelligence services detected no military buildups. To the galaxy at large, humans continued their mundane existence as the Confederacy's newest and most insignificant members. Only a handful of alien analysts noted small anomalies, slight decreases in luxury imports, minor communications delays, the occasional human merchant ship departing slightly early from a port. But these observations were dismissed as statistical noise, unworthy of serious attention. Humanity's patience had been exhausted, but their capacity for planning had not. 30 days passed with remarkable speed. The Confederacy, accustomed to negotiations that spanned years or even decades, had barely begun to form committees to address the human ultimatum. Most delegates assumed the threat would fade as Earth realized the impossibility of survival outside the galactic community. They were wrong. On the morning of the 31st day, Ambassador Foster's office in the Confederate capital stood empty. Not just vacant, completely cleared out. Every human diplomat across 27 worlds had simultaneously departed during the night cycle. High Counselor Zirax stared at the bare walls of what had been the Earth Embassy. "When did they leave?" he demanded. "Unknown, Counselor," replied his aide. "Security logs show nothing unusual. They were simply gone when the morning staff arrived." "And their ships?" "All human diplomatic vessels departed their moorings during standard maintenance cycles. Traffic control assumed they were repositioning for efficiency." Zirax's skin flushed with alarm pigments. "Contact the human trade mission." But there was no trade mission to contact. Across Confederate space, human merchant vessels had vanished from their routes. Cargo deliveries remained uncollected at spaceports. Trade offices stood abandoned. In the Confederacy's central communications hub, technicians frantically worked to reestablish contact with Earth. All standard channels returned only automated messages. "Channel closed by administrative action. Please refer to diplomatic protocols for further information." "Try the emergency frequencies," ordered the supervisor. A technician looked up in confusion. "They're responding on emergency channels with the same message, but adding a reference to Confederate Statute 5291B. "What's that statute?" "It's the withdrawal provision in the membership treaty." On the Viridian homeworld, Minister Threll convened an emergency session of their Economic Council. Reports from across their territory told the same story. Human goods had suddenly become unavailable. Factories dependent on Earth materials sat idle. Merchants specializing in human products faced bankruptcy. "This is a temporary disruption," Threll insisted. "They cannot maintain this stance." An economic advisor fluttered nervously. "Minister, our analysis suggests otherwise. Human trade with our systems has been consistently profitable for us, but represents less than 3% of Earth's total economic activity. They can absorb this loss far better than we can." Similar scenes played out across Confederate territory. Species that had dismissed humans as insignificant suddenly discovered how deeply Earth had integrated into their economies, always in positions that gave humanity leverage, never dependency. The Confederacy Council convened an emergency session and dispatched a high-level delegation to the Sol system, led by High Counselor Zirax himself. Their mission was simple: remind humanity of the benefits of membership and the impossibility of isolation. The delegation's ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Sol system, expecting to be greeted by human representatives. Instead, they found empty space. The orbital platforms that had once bustled with activity hung silent and dark. Automated beacons broadcast simple warnings: restricted space, unauthorized entry prohibited per Earth Unified Government Emergency Order 147. "Scan for defense systems," Zirax ordered. "Nothing detected," reported the ship's operator. "But that's odd. We're not detecting the expected orbital infrastructure either." The delegation proceeded cautiously toward Earth. As they approached Mars, their sensors detected movement. Maintenance drones, operating normally around the human colonies. But no ships, no traffic, no communication beyond automated warnings. "This is madness," muttered a Qualitax delegate. "Where have they gone?" As they approached Earth orbit, their scanners finally detected something new: a small object moving on an intercept course. "Is it a weapon?" asked Zirax. "No," replied the operator. "It appears to be a simple data module." The object attached itself to their hull and transmitted a single message: "The terms for renewed diplomatic relations are unchanged. Earth awaits your response when you are ready to negotiate in good faith." Behind the diplomatic ship, unseen and undetected, 3 human warships tracked their every move, weapons locked but inactive. Humanity had made its first move without firing a single shot. The Viridian High Command refused to accept Earth's position. 2 weeks after the diplomatic mission's return, they dispatched a military patrol to the Sol system. The force consisted of 3 cruisers and their escort vessels, a modest show of force intended to remind humanity of the galactic power structure. "We will simply establish presence in their outer system," Fleet Commander Vex explained to his captains. The humans value their independence, but they are a practical species. They will recognize the futility of resistance. The Viridian ships dropped out of FTL travel near Neptune, well away from Earth's claimed boundaries. Their sensors immediately began mapping the system, looking for signs of human activity. "No contacts, Commander," reported the sensor officer. "System appears quiet except for automated mining operations in the asteroid belt." Vex fluttered his wing membranes thoughtfully. Intelligence had predicted humans would retreat to their homeworld, abandoning their outer system infrastructure. "Move to Uranus orbit and establish patrol pattern. Let them see us and consider their position." The ships accelerated smoothly, their drives leaving the characteristic energy signature of Confederate military vessels. For 20 minutes, they traveled undisturbed through the silence of space. Then their sensors chimed simultaneously. "Multiple contacts," called the sensor officer, his voice rising. "Emerging from Saturn's rings. Count 8. No, 12 vessels." Where there had been empty space, a human battle group now appeared, having used Saturn's rings to mask their presence. At their center was the destroyer Defiance, commanded by Captain Ryan Douglas. "Viridian vessels," Douglas transmitted on an open channel. "You have entered restricted space without authorization. Reverse course immediately." On his bridge, Vex stared at the tactical display with disbelief. The human ships were positioned perfectly to intercept his force, and their energy signatures were unlike anything in Confederate records. Most concerning, his sensors couldn't determine their weapons configuration. "They are bluffing," he told his officers. "Humans have always maintained minimal defense capabilities as required by Confederate treaty. Continue on course." Douglas received the Viridian response with a grim smile. "They're not turning around," he informed his crew. "Implement Demonstration Protocol Alpha." From the human ships, small objects deployed rapidly, spreading out in a precise pattern. Before the Viridian sensors could identify them, the devices activated, creating a web of energy that engulfed the alien vessels. Aboard the Viridian flagship, chaos erupted as systems failed sequentially. Propulsion, weapons, and long-range communications shut down, leaving only life support and short-range transmitters functioning. "What is happening?" demanded Vex, watching as his tactical display showed his other ships similarly affected. "Unknown technology," his science officer replied, frantically analyzing the data. "They've generated some kind of targeted field that's interacting with our power distribution systems." The main view screen activated, showing Captain Douglas's face. "Viridian vessels, your ships have been temporarily disabled by non-destructive means. You are not in danger, but you cannot proceed further into this system." Vex's translator struggled to convey his mixture of outrage and disbelief. "By what authority?" "By Earth's authority within its sovereign space," Douglas interrupted calmly. "Your ships will be towed to the system boundary and released with full functionality restored. You will carry a message back to your government." "What message?" Vex asked, his membranes now flat against his body in the Viridian expression of alarm. "That humanity has chosen to demonstrate restraint today. We could have destroyed your vessels, but that is not our wish. We seek only the respect and rights we have earned through 50 years of peaceful contribution to galactic society." Over the next several hours, the human ships moved the disabled Viridian vessels to Neptune's orbit. As promised, their systems were restored one by one. Before releasing them, Douglas transmitted detailed scans showing additional human forces positioned throughout the system, forces that had remained undetected during the entire encounter. As the Viridian ships limped back toward Confederate space, the implications became clear to every officer aboard. Humanity hadn't just been preparing for withdrawal. They had been concealing their true capabilities for years, perhaps decades. The balance of power had shifted, and no one had noticed until it was too late. News of the Viridian patrol's humiliation spread rapidly through Confederate channels. The Qualitacs, longtime rivals of humanity for resource-rich systems, viewed this development with particular alarm. Where others saw reason for caution, they saw only the need for decisive action. The humans must be taught their place, declared Supreme Commander Xath to the Qualitax High Council. Their colony at Proxima Centauri is isolated and vulnerable. A swift strike there will demonstrate the consequences of defying the Confederacy. Within days, the Qualitax assembled a punitive expedition, 15 warships, including their newest dreadnought, the Inevitable Dominance. Their mission was simple: occupy the human colony, take hostages if necessary, and force Earth back into compliance. At Proxima Centauri, Colonel Sandra Hayes received the warning from Earth's intelligence network. The colony of New Hope, home to 30,000 humans, had only a small defense force, at least according to Confederate records. Evacuation status. Hayes asked her executive officer as they stood in the colony's control center. Civilian shelters at 100% readiness. All non-essential personnel are secure. Defense grid is fully operational but still in stealth configuration. Hayes nodded. And our special assets. Hunter squadrons ready for deployment. The Proxima defensive fleet is in position behind the fourth planet. The Qualitax have no idea they're there. For years, humanity had maintained two separate military structures. The modest Earth Defense Force, visible to Confederate observers, and the true Earth Fleet, hidden from prying eyes. Proxima Centauri housed one of their most advanced battle groups, a fact unknown to anyone outside human command. The Qualitax fleet arrived with typical arrogance, dropping out of FTL directly above the colony rather than at the system's edge. Their dreadnought moved into low orbit, weapons systems powering up in a deliberate show of force. Attention human settlement. Broadcast Commander Xath. Your illegal secession from the Confederacy ends now. Surrender your administrative control or face immediate military action. In the colony's defense center, Hayes smiled coldly. Lieutenant Mitchell, you may launch fighters. From concealed hangars across the colony's surface, small craft suddenly emerge. Not the conventional defensive ships the Confederacy knew about, but a new class of fighters unlike anything in galactic records. Lieutenant Kevin Mitchell led Alpha Squadron from the colony's main spaceport. All wings. Execute Pattern Sigma. Remember, disable where possible. Destroy only when necessary. The human fighters moved with shocking speed, using maneuvers that seemed to defy conventional physics. They swarmed the Qualitax ships before they could organize a proper defense formation. Aboard the Inevitable Dominance, Commander Xath watched in disbelief. What are these craft? Where did they come from? Unknown design, reported his tactical officer. They're using some kind of modified gravity drive that's allowing extreme acceleration without inertial effects on their pilots. Before Xath could respond, larger contacts appeared on their sensors. From behind Proxima's fourth planet, 7 human capital ships emerge, their weapon systems already locked on the Qualitax fleet. Qualitax vessels, Hayes transmitted. Your unprovoked aggression against a civilian colony has been met with appropriate defensive measures. Your ships are now surrounded and targeted. You have 2 options: immediate withdrawal or complete neutralization. Mitchell's fighters demonstrated humanity's technological edge by systematically disabling the weapons on 3 Qualitax cruisers without destroying the vessels. The message was clear. Humans could have annihilated them, but were choosing restraint. Commander Xath faced the most humiliating moment of his career. Half his fleet was already combat ineffective, and the human capital ships had his dreadnought targeted from multiple vectors. We will withdraw, he finally transmitted. But the Confederacy will not tolerate this rebellion indefinitely. This isn't rebellion, Commander, Hayes responded. This is humanity finally standing as equals. Remember what you saw here today. As the defeated Qualitax fleet limped away, news of the battle spread across Confederate space. The message could not be clearer. Humanity had been holding back, concealing their true capabilities for decades. The species that had been dismissed as junior partners had revealed themselves as formidable opponents. The galaxy would never see humans the same way again. 3 days after the Battle of Proxima, An unusual communication reached Earth's temporary diplomatic headquarters on Luna. 5 species, the Nolurans, Trespi, Havenites, Juraxians, and Mendari, had formed a coalition seeking dialogue with humanity. Unlike the Viridians or Qualitax, these were species that had historically maintained cordial relations with Earth. They're requesting a neutral meeting site, reported Lisa Morrison, Earth's chief negotiator, to the Emergency Council. They claim to have authority to discuss our demands without Viridian or Qualitax interference. President Howard looked around the table. Opinions. Could be a trap, Admiral Wilson said, or a delaying tactic while they assess our capabilities. Morrison shook her head. I don't think so. The economic disruption from our withdrawal is spreading faster than predicted. The Juraxians just reported food shortages on 3 of their worlds due to the suspension of Earth agricultural shipments. Agree to the meeting, President Howard decided. But on our terms, not theirs. 2 days later, representatives from both sides gathered at Ceres Station, a mining facility in the asteroid belt. Earth security teams had swept the location thoroughly, and the station was surrounded by disguised defensive platforms. Morrison led the human delegation into the conference room, where 5 alien representatives waited. The contrast was striking. The aliens wore their ceremonial finery, while the humans dressed in simple, practical attire. Welcome to Ceres, Morrison began. We appreciate your willingness to meet. The Nolaran delegate, a tall being with iridescent skin, spoke first. We come seeking understanding. The Confederacy has existed for millennia. No species has ever withdrawn before. No species has ever been treated as humans have been, Morrison replied calmly. 50 years of contribution, innovation, and peaceful cooperation, yet still classified as provisional members with limited rights. There are processes, procedures, began the Trespi representative. Procedures designed to maintain the status quo, Morrison interrupted. Let me be direct. Earth's terms haven't changed. Equal voting rights, removal of technology transfer restrictions, fair access to colonization opportunities. The Havenite delegate, a small avian being, chirped nervously. The Qualitax and Viridians will never agree to this. They already face the consequences of disagreement, Morrison said. Your coalition represents 40% of Confederate trade. You're here because you've calculated that meeting our demands costs less than continuing without Earth's participation. The aliens exchanged glances. The Mendari representative leaned forward. Your military capabilities are unexpected. How did you conceal them for so long? Morrison smiled. Perhaps we should demonstrate exactly what humanity has been holding back. She nodded to her colleague. Daniel. Engineer Daniel Parker activated a holographic display. What you're seeing is only a fraction of technologies we've developed independently. We maintain 2 separate development tracks, one public, one private. The display showed propulsion systems far beyond Confederate standards, defensive shields using principles unknown to alien science, and communication technology that operated without detectable signatures. This is impossible, whispered the Juraxian. You were under constant observation. Were we? Parker asked with a slight smile. Or did you see what we wanted you to see? Morrison let the implications sink in before continuing. Beyond military technology, consider our economic leverage. Confederate supply chains are already failing. Your manufacturing worlds depend on materials only Earth can provide efficiently. She displayed another set of data showing plummeting stock values across Confederate exchanges. Trading houses specializing in human goods faced bankruptcy. Shipyards sat idle without human components. We don't wish to cause hardship, Morrison said more gently. Humanity wants to be part of the galactic community, but as equals, not subordinates. The Nolaran delegate's skin rippled with color patterns indicating deep thought. If we support your demands in the Council, what guarantees do we have about resumed trade? Immediate restoration of all previous agreements, plus preferential terms for your 5 species for the next standard year, Morrison replied promptly. We've prepared detailed proposals. As the meeting continued, the alien delegates gradually shifted from resistance to pragmatic acceptance. They had not expected humans to negotiate from a position of such strength, or to have planned so thoroughly for this moment. By the session's end, the coalition had agreed to support Earth's demands in exchange for economic concessions that would actually leave them better positioned than before the crisis. As they departed, the Mendari representative paused beside Morrison. "We never truly knew your species, did we?" Morrison smiled. "Perhaps now you'll have the opportunity to discover who we really are." The Grand Council chamber of the Galactic Confederacy had never been so crowded. Representatives from every member species filled the seats, with even the observation galleries packed to capacity. At the center of attention stood Ambassador William Carter, Earth's newly appointed diplomatic chief. Unlike his predecessor, Carter did not sit at the far end of the chamber. A new position had been created, directly across from the High Counselor, symbolizing humanity's changed status. "The vote stands at 93 in favor, 27 opposed," announced High Counselor Zirax, his voice carefully neutral. "The motion to grant Earth full membership status with all attendant rights and privileges is approved." A murmur ran through the chamber. The Viridian delegation sat stiffly, their wing membranes flat against their bodies in the posture of extreme displeasure. The Qualitax representatives had refused to even attend the session. Carter rose to speak. "The people of Earth thank the Confederacy for this recognition. We look forward to a new era of cooperation based on mutual respect." His words were diplomatic, but everyone present understood the reality. Earth hadn't been granted anything. They had demonstrated the power to take what was rightfully theirs, and then chosen negotiation over force. In orbit above the Confederate capital, the Earth vessel Concord maintained position. It was the first human military ship to openly display the advanced technology that had been hidden for decades. Its presence was both a gesture of goodwill and a subtle reminder. Over the following weeks, human citizens gradually returned to Confederate space. Merchant vessels resumed their routes. Scientists reappeared at joint research facilities. But things were not the same as before. In the Central Technology Exchange, Dr. Samantha Rivera supervised the installation of new equipment. This reactor design increases efficiency by approximately 30% compared to standard Confederate models. She explained to the alien technicians, "We're providing full schematics as a gesture of our commitment to technological cooperation." What she didn't mention was that Earth laboratories had already developed the next 3 generations of improvements. Humanity would share, but strategically, maintaining their edge while fulfilling their obligations. Throughout Confederate territory, other changes became apparent. Species that had previously been marginalized found unexpected support for their own petitions for improved status. The Havenites, long restricted from expanding beyond their home system due to Viridian objections, suddenly found those restrictions lifted after Earth representatives questioned their legitimacy. "The humans have changed everything," observed a Juraxian diplomat to his Nolaran colleague as they watched a council session. "They've exposed the power imbalance that has existed for centuries. And they did it without firing a single destructive shot," the Nolaran replied. "That may be the most remarkable aspect of all." 3 months after the crisis began, Ambassador Carter met with representatives from 12 species in what would become known as the Equality Accord, a new framework for ensuring fair treatment regardless of technological development or time of Confederacy membership. "We believe that diversity of perspective strengthens us all," Carter told the assembled delegates. "Earth doesn't seek dominance. We seek partnership." On the Qualitax homeworld, their leaders finally accepted the new reality. Their initial calls for military action against Earth had faded as intelligence reports revealed just how thoroughly they had underestimated human capabilities. Their economy, heavily dependent on controlling access to certain trade routes, was suffering as Earth opened alternative paths for smaller species. "We must adapt," their prime strategist told the Qualitax High Command. "The humans have changed the equation permanently." Across human settlements, life returned to normal. but with a new sense of pride and security. The patience of humanity had indeed broken, but what emerged was not the destructive force that many had feared. Instead, it was a measured assertion of their rightful place in the galaxy. As Admiral Wilson remarked to President Howard during the first anniversary celebration, "Sometimes you don't need to fire your weapons to win a war. Sometimes you just need to let others know that you can." The stars looked different now to all species of the Confederacy. A new balance had been established, one that would endure because it was built on respect rather than dominance. And at the center of this transformation stood humanity, no longer pretending to be less than they were.